Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Yes, we have closed the door on July of 2024. Welcome to the last drops of summer as we head into August. Whew, it's been hot the last few days, and today's no exception. This is Denver's monthly real estate podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report. And I'm your host and local realtor, Ricky.schoonover of 8Z Real Estate. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. Today marks the 4th episode of our 5th season. I have a dramatic shift in the way that I present Denver's monthly real estate podcast. You know, I used to be able to publish and distribute on one platform. That platform has changed formats. So now I am doing a live recorded version of my podcast. So hopefully this goes well today. Speaking of last drops of summer, I have a batch of wheat beer in my fermenter right now. The name of that beer is just that. The last drops of summer. I did mix in a mix of wheat and 2-row malt. I lightly hopped it, and then during the secondary fermentation, I added some mango puree. So now I'm just waiting for that so the sugars ferment a little bit more and keep that nice and fresh mango flavor without it being like overly sweet. So I have a funny story about my beer brewing history. You know, when I was about 20 years old, just to put things in perspective, I'm 54 this year. However, when I was 20 years old, I was walking through a strip mall, and there was this brew supply shop. And in the front window display, they had a beer kit. And it had 2 5-gallon buckets. You know, it had a can of malt extract and all the little hoses and doodads and everything you would need to brew up and bottle a basic batch of beer. So the gentleman goes through the entire kit with me. He was super excited. I think it was like $54. And I said I wanted to buy it and then give it a try. And he asked me, well, how old are you? And I explained. I said, well, I'm 20 years old. He says, well, I can't sell you this until you're 21. And I told him I was going to be 21 in November. And this was like the summer of like 1991, I guess it would have been. So he says, come back to me in November. So after I turned 21, I bought this kit and I made up like my very first batch of beer. And it was a basic amber. You know, it wasn't great beer, but then again, it wasn't terrible. It was drinkable. My mother was not too pleased though, as I was using up her biggest pots and taking up her whole kitchen for the better part of the day. So, from age 21 till I was about 24, off and on, I would brew beer and this basic, kit that I'd bought. Then I even bought like a propane burner so I could do this in the garage. Then at age 24, I joined the U.S. Navy, went on to basic training in Great Lakes, Illinois. That was outside of Chicago area. Then I graduated boot camp. I flew home, jumped in my truck, drove that out to Pensacola, Florida. That's where I went to air crew school. I went to rescue swimmer school. And then from there, I drove to Millington, Tennessee, outside of Memphis. And there was more schooling. And actually, that's where I learned how to track submarines. It was in Millington. Who knew, right? I learned to listen to subs in the middle of America. The only submarines that were there were the ones on base, and they were above ground. They were like on displays for decorations. But then eventually, I graduated all my schools, and I was stationed not too far from my parents' house, right there in San Diego. And I was telling all my newly made Navy buddies that my parents lived nearby and that I was going to brew a batch of beer for them. So I started brewing beer for my friends. And that got really popular. In fact, I finally bought a kegerator and I started having beer on tap in my Navy dorm room. I would leave the door open. It was like a common area. So I'd leave the door open and I'd leave a little can on the side of the keg and ask folks to drop $1 or whatever they could to help themselves to a beer. And that way I could use that money to keep buying supplies. Well, then came a surprise dorm room inspection, and 2 of the senior ranking petty officers, I was a petty officer 3rd class at that point. But anyway, 2 of the senior ranking petty officers came in to do their inspections. No one knew that they were coming. And they both grabbed themselves a beer. They left $1 and they gave me an outstanding on my room inspection. So I was approached later by one of our instructors. His name was Petty Officer Dalrymple. And he was one of the guys that had inspected my room earlier that week. And he wanted to learn more about brewing beer. So we got him all the stuff he would need. I even upgraded some of my old supplies, and we started brewing beer in his garage. And that went on for a while. But then eventually me and one of my Navy buddies, Zipe, we bought an old 1960s Chris Craft wooden hold boat. And he and I moved off base, and we lived on the boat for a while. We lived in a marina right there in San Diego Harbor. And it was really fun, but the boat was always needing work. Eventually, I sold my share to ZPay, just gave them half of what we paid for it. And I moved into an apartment and saved up some money so I could buy my first condo. That was when I was about, 30, 31. Anyways, that's my beer brewing history. I have picked up the hobby since moving here to Denver like 8 or 9 years ago. So I'm looking forward to kegging my last drops of summer, my wheat beer, for this really hot weather. All right, so let's get into some real estate. Ricky, what's going on in the market? Well, I see some properties moving fairly quickly, and I see some sitting on the market for a while. If you've listened to last month's podcast, I mentioned I had 3 listings. I now have just 2 listings, which are actually active. I have a 1-bedroom condo. It's over near that new shopping area over there, Colorado Boulevard, 9th Avenue, which they call 9 Inco. It's a 604 square foot condo listed for $200,000. And then I have a townhouse with this beautiful city view, Sloan's Lake view, mountain views. That one's a modern build with 2 bedrooms. It's got a dedicated office on the first floor, and then it's got a 1-car garage with like a little extra space for like a workshop or a workbench. And that one's right near that Edgewater Public Marketplace, and it's listed at $700,000. So each of these are taking a little longer than expected. We've been responding to the market by lowering the price and holding open houses. However, no serious buyers yet. So if you're looking for a great investment property or a starter condo or a modern townhouse with great views, give me a call on those. It's 720-688-5110. I had another property listed. It's up in the foothills there in Evergreen. That one received an offer and went to contract within just 6 days of going active in the MLS. So that was remarkable. All the homes are well presented, the professional photography staged very well. And the average time a home is sitting on market currently in Denver is right around 36 days. So that is the time from when your home goes to active in the MLS until you receive and accept an offer to purchase. Then once you have an accepted offer, the typical contract timeline is about 30 days. This can vary, of course. It depends on what the buyers and sellers agree to. However, if you're obtaining a mortgage loan, you'll need at least 21 days. Banks can sometimes close faster, but it's hard to commit to such a faster time than 21 days. That's just to be safe. That is largely due to the time it takes to get the appraisal lined up, get it completed, and get the results back. If a buyer's paying cash, then you don't really need to do an appraisal. I mean, obviously you can, but if you don't, it'll speed things up, and those deals can close a lot faster. I still typically give 14 days just so you have enough time for inspections, disclosures, etc. Can you get an all-cash deal done in 7 or 8 days? Sure. However, if you're doing inspections, and yes, you should have your home inspected, you'll need to get that lined up. The reason I bring this up is because when someone's thinking of selling their home, they're thinking about buying a home. There are always time considerations to take in. And if you don't get your realtor involved early enough in the process, there can be some level of, shock or disappointment. For instance, if you were planning on selling your home this year, now December seems like a long time off, right? However, if we started that process today, we, take into account getting your home ready, getting the photo shoot. We also schedule the photo shoot, then, getting the marketing going and getting your home into the MLS. We're very likely, even if we started today, we're like the last half of August by that time. Then we take an average of, say, 36 days. Maybe it takes a little longer, a little less, but till the end of September or so to get, the first half of October. That's when you get your offer and accepted. Now we're going into November, and then there's Thanksgiving in there, and then you very well not have your home sold until the beginning of December, and that is everything if everything goes perfectly. So you take the same logic, and if you were wanting to sell the spring of next year, you'd want to call me in December if you want to have your home sold by like May of next year. So can things move quicker? Yes, of course. Can things move slower? Yes, they can. My point is a well laid out plan has a better chance at success. You'll be less stressed out. You'll have all the knowledge regarding the process, and you'll be fully educated on what to expect and when to expect it. So when you speak to friends and family and colleagues and they express to you what a horrible experience they had when they were buying or selling their homes, I would almost place money on the fact that they did not properly plan. They just kind of winged it, didn't get their realtor involved super early. That spring sale was stressful because, they wanted to wait until April to call the realtor and then wanted to sell by May or June. They also wanted to buy a new home before the kids start, the new school year. And in October, they were still not in their new home, and if they would have called the realtor early on, we could have got them all settled, and it just would have been a lot easier. The entire process would have been planned out with contingency plans in place to cover all their bases. So there is a reason I'm not a transactional broker. Talk to any of my past clients. I mean, especially those who call me early in the process. We build a relationship. We have events throughout the year. We do all sorts of stuff like Nuggets games, giveaways. We go to baseball games. We do Oktoberfest. We have whiskey tastings, happy hours. These are all opportunities where my clients and my potential clients are welcome to sign up and join us for these events. Even if we've never done business, it's okay. Come to these events. They have a far greater purpose than just hanging out with people who I enjoy working with or enjoy being around. These events are to build and maintain a relationship so that when you have something going on in your real estate, whether it's real estate related or not, you have someone in your corner, someone that knows your situation. Maybe you're having an issue with your AC unit or your drain is backing up. These have not really anything to do with me as a realtor. However, they are things that I have resources to help you with. They're also great opportunities where you're like, oh, hey, not anything for right now, but next spring, I'm thinking about selling my home. How long is it typically taking, right now for homes to get an accepted offer and then to go on to close? Or, what are the interest rates right now? Are they trending up? Or are they trending down? There are so many preliminary questions that we could be casually just talking about so that, then maybe you can adjust your time frame and you know what to expect and you know when to give me a call so we can get things going. So when I can maintain a relationship and build on that relationship, well beyond or well before we actually do business together, those are all opportunities for you to be better prepared without any sort of commitments. There's no pressure. There's no obligations. Today more than ever, it's so important to build relationships with your trusted realtor. All right, so let's hit another topic. As you maybe have read, there was a class action type lawsuit, over this past year. And part of that settlement was to remove the co-op from the MLS and instead add compensation to our contracts to buy and sell real estate. Now, I've already gone over why compensation became the default. If you're a listener to this podcast, then you know that by asking the seller a certain price in their home, they build it into the price of their home. So that in accepting that price, they're also committing to compensating the buyer's representation. And now you might be thinking, how is that beneficial to the seller? They have to pay. They get the opportunity for more qualified buyers, which then increases their chances at an offer. It even further increases their chances at multiple offers, etc. So the bottom line is, more chance at more money due to a higher number of potential qualified buyers. So let's not belabor that today. Why it makes sense for sellers to pay the compensation, it just does. And if you're not sure why, give me a call directly. We can discuss in detail, buyer pools and how and when you build compensation into your sales price, and then how that allows more people into the buyer pool, and then you have more chance at an offer or maybe even multiple offers. So the big change here is we'll no longer see the buyer co-op in the MLS. The buyer now has the power to structure their offer in a way that makes sense to them, where their offer to the seller, request the seller or the seller's broker to pay their buyer's broker representation. There may be instances where they want to be stronger and they have the funds and they just want to structure their offer where they take care of their buyer representation on their own. It all depends on the buyer, all depends on the seller and what's going on. All right, so that's going to wrap up today's podcast. This is the first one we've done where I've actually been on camera, so this is a little bit interesting for me, and still trying to catch my notes and talk to you as well. But hit that subscribe button, especially if you're on my YouTube channel in that lower right-hand corner there. Hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions about real estate or the market, or you want more clarity about how maybe able to help you structure an offer and what to expect when we list your home on the market, anything really, I'm your resource. Give me a call, 720-688-5110. This is Ricky Schoonover of 8Z Real Estate, and you have been tuned in to the Denver Homes Market Report.